generation.
Dates in the Bible don't quite match the marriage certificate. Uh-oh.
And welcome to America's Family History Show, Extreme Genes and ExtremeGenes.com. It is Fisher here, your radio root sleuth, on the program where we shake your family tree and watch the nuts fall out. It is great to have you along, Genies. Well, it was about 3 years ago that I first introduced you to Jim Bailey. He is a metal detectorist in Rhode Island, and he made an amazing find that connected to a pirate ancestor of mine. And now that story has gone international. So we're going to update you on that with a visit with Jim coming up here in about 10 minutes or so. And then after that, we're going to do our monthly update with our friends at Ancestry.com. Krista Cowan is going to be here. They've got some great new partnerships going on you're going to want to know about. Some great changes going on in the DNA section of Ancestry.com, plus new databases she's going to talk about. So we've got a lot of things going on over there. Hey, if you haven't signed up for our weekly Genie newsletter yet, you know I hate to bug you, but it's time you did it. Just get on our website, ExtremeGenes.com, or go to our Facebook page to get signed up for free. You get the blog from me each week, links to past and present shows, and links to stories you will appreciate as a genealogist. Right now, it's time to head out to Boston, Massachusetts, where David Allen Lambert is standing by, the chief genealogist of the New England Historic Genealogical Society and AmericanAncestors.org. David, how are you?
Hey, I'm doing great. Was on vacation last week. I got to go into Boston and actually wander around colonial cemeteries and where John Winthrop's house used to stand. So I got to play a tourist in my own city.
That's a fun thing to do because there's a lot of history there. But you also had an interesting discovery involving a photograph.
Well, in the beginning of April 1921, my grandmother lost her first husband, Daniel Archibald McDonald, unfortunately died of TB at the age of 23, leaving her with two small children. And I have a postcard-sized photograph of him with my grandmother. Well, when he died, they made large oval-framed photos of him for each one of the girls and for his mother. Well, I know where most of them are, but I now own one of them. One of my cousins decided that I was the best person for this. But the kicker of it is I used some forensic photo genealogical tools because I looked at the picture and I'm like, what is that on his lapel? And it wasn't a stain. It was a pin. And that pin had a Liberty Bell on it. Enough of the writing was legible, and I Googled it. And then I went on to eBay, and for $4, I have in my possession right now an exact original pin that he was wearing for the third Liberty loan in 1918, which makes sense because in the picture that this is from, he was holding my aunt, born in 1918, who was a toddler at the time. So he must have bought a World War I Liberty loan in 1918, put the pin on his lapel, and well, the pin is long since gone, but I now have a duplicate of it that I can frame right next to the picture. And I
love
know
this.
You appreciate that sort of thing because you do the same thing.
Well, yes, and we talked to Robert Warren last week who had that same experience. I mean, people are taking the eBay challenge to see what they can find, and here's another example of a great discovery using, I guess you'd call it, forensic photography.
And thanks to eBay, I can hold the very same type of pin in my hand.
Yeah, $4.
Carefully. $4.
Yeah.
Free shipping. Well, and Daniel died in 1921, and about 2 months later, Prince Philip was born. So as we stay with 1921 as a story, and of course, Prince Philip has recently passed at the age of 99. But did you know that the Queen and Prince Philip were third cousins?
I knew they were related somehow. How does this fit?
Well, they are related through Queen Victoria. Queen Victoria's daughter being the female ancestor of Philip through his matrilineal line. Actually, his mtDNA is Queen Victoria. And then Queen Elizabeth, she gets a male line from Edward VII down to George V, down to her father, and then to herself. So they are in direct line, and it's obviously something that's probably similar to a lot of people's genealogies.
Sure.
You probably have distant cousins that are even a closer cousin relationship getting married, as I have in my own tree in New England. Well, you never know what you're going to find in an attic. I love the stories we've done over the years. And this one is about a 121-year-old chocolate bar sent from Queen Victoria. Well, not directly, but it was sent to troops in South Africa in 1900, the year before she died. And it's in a little tin. And this English soldier who was in South Africa brought it home and put it in the hat box with his helmet from the war. And there it sat. And recently his own daughter died at the age of 100, and they were going through her things, and voila. I just want to know who's going to be the daring person to break off a piece of that chocolate and give it a try.
That would be what, about 120 years old now, and it's from Prince Philip's and Queen Elizabeth's great-grandmother. And the chocolate and the tin and all this was put together, as I understand it, by Quaker chocolate makers who were against war. So they didn't want to actually put anything on the tin. They just wanted to ship it there. But apparently the Queen's office said, no, we have to let them know it's from us. It's from the government. We love them. So they came to some kind of compromise. But it's a neat tin. It looks to be in perfect condition. You just got to wonder what's under the foil inside that tin.
Mm-hmm. Well, the National Trust basically says these tins are rare, but to find it with the chocolate still inside and to have the provenance of the original person who got it, makes it even rarer.
Sure.
So that's a very expensive piece of chocolate that no one will probably ever want to eat.
Yeah, but what a great heirloom. I love it.
I would love to have something like that. I'm going to just go buy a Hershey bar, and I'm going to put it in a can. And I'm going to put it up in my attic and see in 100 years if anybody sells it.
There you go.
Of course, I won't be on eBay to watch it. Well, remember, if you're not a member of American Ancestry, you can join us and save $20 on your membership with the code EXTREME on AmericanAncestors.org. Talk to you later, my friend.
Yes, you're going to be back for Ask Us Anything. We're looking forward to that. And coming up next, my good friend Jim Bailey, the metal detectorist from Rhode Island, who is rewriting history of a pirate whose crew included one of my ancestors. His story has gone international. You're going to want to hear what Jim Bailey has to say. Coming up in 3 minutes on Extreme Genes, America's Family History Show. Hey Genies, our friends at Ancestry.com are not only out there giving us new databases and improved tools for finding our ancestors and connecting with family. Ancestry has now launched its Community Impact Program. The aim of this program is to mobilize ancestry resources and products to build more connected and resilient communities through preserving at-risk history and empowering the next generation of history makers. For example, check out the new and free Danish West Indies record collection with many other at-risk history records at Ancestry.com/Black History. Ancestry is also partnering with Facing History and Ourselves to bring a no-cost Ancestry K-12 program to students everywhere to empower teachers and students to think critically about history. Ancestry is also upgrading its messaging system to improve response as well as to allow you to share pictures with your newfound cousins. Ancestry.com, always looking for ways to improve our genie journeys and make our communities stronger. Anytime is a great time to learn more about your family. Did you miss Roots Tech Connect this year? It's not too late to experience Roots Tech classes, keynotes, and how-to content. Just visit rootstech.org to see what you missed and to experience Roots Tech Connect on your own timetable. Select inspiring and insightful messages that will help you in your pursuit to connect with and share your family story in new ways. You can then use the free resources found at FamilySearch.org or the Family Search Family Tree app to have a deeper personal experience getting to know your family, past and present. Connecting with family and learning about your ancestors provides healing, peace, and a sense of belonging. And it's easy to share what you learn with others to help and inspire them as well. Visit rootstech.org for some inspiration or visit FamilySearch.org to continue on your journey of family discovery today.
At Legacy Tree Genealogists, we provide families like yours with the stories of your ancestors, a legacy that will be cherished for generations to come. Legacy Tree Genealogists provides genealogy research for clients worldwide, helping them discover their roots and personal history through records, narratives, and DNA analysis. And when your research requires access to on-site archives in the countries your ancestors lived, Legacy Tree Genealogists has researchers in more than 100 countries around the globe who know the local language and how to get their hands on the records you need. Legacy Tree Genealogists is the recommended research firm of genealogy industry leaders worldwide, including MyHeritage, 23andMe, and more. Check out what our clients have to say. Absolutely the best. They communicated through the entire process, and my report arrived on time. The story of my family with supporting documents was very fulfilling. Tom G. Google review. Don't wait any longer. Request your free quote today at legacytree.com. Legacy Tree Genealogists. We do the research. You enjoy the discoveries.
Well, it was back in 2018 that I met my next guest. He actually reached out to me because he had a fascinating story about pirates and coins, and it tied into my ancestor, a pirate by the name of William Downes, who was a member of the crew of the King of Pirates, as they called him, Henry Every, back in the 1690s. And Jim Bailey is a metal detectorist in Rhode Island, and Jim found a coin with Arabian markings on it some time back. And it isn't the only one that's been dug up in North America. Jim, welcome back to Extreme Genes. Great to have you.
I'm glad to be here.
Well, a lot of things have changed here in the last little bit. And of course, since you first came on the show those 3 years ago, you and I have stayed in touch because your research certainly has bearing on my ancestor. And as a result of all the things you've been able to put together, you've actually reassembled the final chapter of this voyage of Captain Henry Every.
Yeah, it's really changed the story.
Yeah, quite a bit, because what's happened now, if you've noticed in the news the last 10 days or so, Jim has gone worldwide with the story. The Associated Press picked it up, and you're getting coverage now in China. You're getting coverage over in Turkey. You've been doing interviews with them over there, radio and newspapers and television stations all over the place. So the story of Henry Every is being rewritten. And while most of us, myself, and of course people who listen to this show, come from all of this from a family history point of view, you come to the history of this whole thing from the discovery of your coin. So let's go through that a little, Jim. You found that coin how long ago now?
I found that coin in 2014.
And where did you find it?
I found it in Middletown, Rhode Island at Sweetberry Farm, which is a pick-your-own farm, where I started detecting way back in 2004. So I've been at this for a while.
Yeah, a long, long time. So what's the experience like? You're going around this farm. You have permission, I would imagine, from the owners that you can go do this. What happens now? Where were you when you came upon this?
So this was 2014. It was the springtime, and that's usually when I'm on the farm, early in the spring or in the fall season. And it was my second stop for the day. I had to get home, and I wanted to put in about another half hour because sometimes that's all you need.
Right. Were you looking for something in particular?
No, well, the farm is a colonial period house site from, I'd estimate, from the mid-17th century. Now, it's long gone, but in the work fields, you'll see brick and black colonial glass and clay pipe stems. And from that, there was a house there. And,
Sure.
And that's what I'm there for. I'm looking for remnants of the house and the people who occupied the house.
And you go then and research the site before you decide where you're going to do your metal detecting. So on this day, you're out there in the field. And what is the response? I've never gone metal detecting before.
Well, you just kind of get your machine up and running and you go. And, you can't beat luck. And this was between rows. And honest to goodness, I said, let me count rows. And I said, I'll go with lucky row number 7.
Really?
It was lucky number 7. And I took 20 steps or so. I got a good signal. It was quite deep.
How deep is deep?
This coin was probably 10 inches deep. It was a pretty thick plug of dirt. And I flip it over. And at the bottom of the plug, I could see this dark edge of this silver coin sticking out of the clod of dirt. And I was wondering if it was almost like a piece of slate and not a coin, because it's not entirely round. It's not a perfectly round milled coin. And I took a poke at it with my pinpoint and was delighted to find out it was metallic. It was a coin. I had to douse it with water, and it was covered with Arabic script, and I was just blown away.
Yeah, I bet. And then that's where your research began into how in the world in New England on a farm you could have an Arabic coin with what date on it?
The date on the coin is 1693.
Wow. So all the coins, though, there have been 16 found, not by yourself. You've only found this one, but other detectorists, most of them throughout New England. I think there's one that was found in North Carolina. Is that correct?
That's correct. There's one coin that was found in North Carolina, 16 coins in total. Now, with the recent story from the AP coming out, now we have a 17th tentative specimen. I have to send it out to Steve Album to get it dated to make sure it dates properly. All the coins were taken from this Mughal treasure ship that was captured in 1695. None of the coins date after 1695.
What a great indicator, right?
What a great indicator. The only thing better than that is we have 7 coins with exact dates. Some coins are only dated by the reign of the issuing ruler. 7 coins are dated with exact dates ranging from 1691 to 1694. In the following year, you have the capture of the Gunsway, 1695.
Right.
So the dating correlates perfectly with this incident, which was one of the biggest piracies in history.
Yeah, and this is actually a guy who was really kind of a low-class guy out of England who was a sailor on a ship, and he took over the ship in Spain. To make a really long story short, he named himself captain, and he took a whole fleet of pirate ships and attacked this one huge ship that belonged to what they called the Mughal of India. And he was the one ruler in the world who was the king of more people on the planet at that time than anybody else. So this was a big deal. It affected trade between England and this Mughal. And so they started a worldwide manhunt for Henry Every and his crew, who hung out in the Bahamas for a while and then went to make their escape back to England. And some of them wound up getting hanged there by the King of England and his courts because they wanted to make a statement that they weren't going to tolerate this kind of interference with world trade. But what's happened now is with the discovery of the coin, you, Jim, have gone in and found more information relating to where Henry Every left, because all the history books have said this captain went and tried to escape to Ireland and he was never seen again, but he had some of his crew with him and many of them were caught. But instead, your information now from some of the testimony from those trials reveals that Henry Every actually went to North America first.
That's correct. And so for 325 years now, it's been a lost history.
Yeah.
And due to the recovery of this first coin, a mere 12 grains of silver, a dime in your pocket weighs 30 grains. So this is 12 grains of silver.
Wait a minute. A dime weighs 30 grains?
A dime roughly weighs 30 grains. In comparison, these silver Kamasi coins from Yemen, that's where most of these coins originated from, they weigh about 12 grains, so about a third the weight of a dime in your pocket. Yeah.
And you found this on a farm 10 inches below the ground and then turned this into this amazing history. Now, among the crew members of the ship, which was called the Fancy, was one William Downs, and he was my 7th great-grandfather. And he wound up actually in jail in Newport, Rhode Island, because, of course, he was a wanted man as being a part of the pirate crew. But they were a very pirate-friendly place there in Newport, not too far from where you are, Jim. And he wound up asking the jailer to allow him to step outside to, quote-unquote, ease himself, and he was never seen again.
That's correct. The sheriff, Thomas Townsend, found himself out of the job for complicity in the escape of your ancestor. And that's likely because, as we know through the primary source documents, that Thomas Townsend, the sheriff, his daughter was married to one of the pirates in Every's crew. So
exactly. So
only in Rhode Island.
Only in Rhode Island. So my ancestor wound up about 12 miles north of Newport in Bristol, which is now part of Rhode Island, but it was part of Massachusetts Bay Colony at the time. And he married Elizabeth Gorham, who was a great-granddaughter of John Howland of the Mayflower. The interesting thing about this, as we put the history of William Downes together, is there's no trace of William Downes of Bristol, who married Elizabeth Gorham, before the escape of the pirate. And there's no sign of the pirate after he escapes from jail. And there are also other things. William Downes of Bristol was also a mariner. There were no Downes family members around him. And all of the William Downes or William Downeses of New England, they're all accounted for. They married someone else, they lived somewhere else, they died at a different time, that type of thing. So you put all the evidence together and you realize it's got to be the same guy. So it's a fascinating story, and now thanks to your research, this thing is blown up because the Associated Press picked up on it.
It's wonderful because I find more and more people getting involved in this. And we're basically now all like detectives trying to solve this ultimate cold case dating back over 3 centuries. Now we have this 17th coin now being reported. I received an email from Dr. Kevin McBride at UConn, who was interviewed for the story. He received an email from someone who reported finding this other Arabian silver coin on the shores of the Niantic River off the coast of Connecticut.
Right.
Now, according to the historical records, Henry Every also took his men ashore on Fisher's Island, which is off the eastern end of Long Island. Fisher's Island is only 5 miles
from the Niantic.
From the Niantic River.
That's right.
It's just fantastic because I feel like we're chasing these guys down. They're like bank robbers with $50 bills flying out of the window of the getaway car. So
this is really fun. Well, Jim, congratulations. I hope it turns into a movie, into a book, into a TV show, something, because you deserve it. You've really been working on this for a long, long time. And we're very proud that we were the first to give national attention to your find.
That's right, because what can I say? The story's running in China, Jerusalem, Thailand, Japan, Ireland, England. It's all over the place. But folks, you heard it first on Extreme Genes about 3 years ago.
3 years ago, that's right. Well, thanks, buddy. It's great to talk to you. Get some sleep. I know you're doing interviews almost around the clock here lately.
Yeah, it's been a whirlwind.
All right, Jim, take care. We'll talk to you again.
I'm so happy to be here. You take care.
And coming up next, Krista Cowan from Ancestry.com is back for her monthly visit to talk about some of the latest releases on Extreme Genes, America's Family History Show. Hey, you found us. Extreme Genes, America's Family History Show, and ExtremeGenes.com. It is Fisher here, your radio root sleuth. And it's time once again for a monthly visit with our good friends over at our sponsors at Ancestry.com to talk to Krista Cowan once again. And Krista, there's a lot of things to talk about today that we've got to cover, starting with this great new partnership you've got going with Facing History and Ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. So Facing History and Ourselves is this amazing organization that does really crucial work to help millions of students use history to understand the world around them, to gain greater resilience, and to better stand up to bigotry and hate. And we've partnered with them with our K through 12 program to provide them with access to additional resources so that they can continue to connect to that history.
Boy, when you consider that you've reached out now to some, 500,000 K through 12 kids to provide them free access to ancestry records, that's a phenomenal thing to do. And when you consider how many people are still Holocaust deniers out there, this should help stem the tide with that in future generations.
Absolutely. Ancestry has other partnerships with organizations like the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum and the Arlson Archives out of Germany, where we have access to those records specifically pertaining to victims of Nazi persecution. All of those are going to be made available through this new partnership and into the hands of teachers across the country.
And this is all part of your Ancestry Community Impact Program too, right?
It is. This is actually kind of the launch of that program. And our aim is just to mobilize ancestry resources and products to build more connected and resilient communities through preserving at-risk history and empowering the next generation of history makers.
And then we've got a lot of new databases out there, one in particular that deals with enslavement is it the Danish West Indies?
It is, yeah. So as part of the key initiative of this new Ancestry Community Impact Program, we are digitizing and preserving at-risk history. And so a unique record collection that came to our attention from the Danish West Indies archives is about a very specific time in history that is at risk of being overlooked or forgotten. And that has to do with specifically those who were enslaved in the Danish West Indies. So these, let's see, I think we've got 4 new databases, including census records, records of enslavement, and records of what they were doing as occupations as they came out of enslavement. So just a really incredible set of really rich historical records. They date from 1724 to 1916.
1916, so there's still slavery going on at that time there.
Well, it wasn't that slavery was going on at the time. It's just that those who had been enslaved were still alive at the time and providing information about their experience in enslavement.
And so to get to all of this, you can just go to ancestry.com/Black history.
Correct.
And, you know, when you think about all this, the education you're providing to the kids and all that, I mean, it really takes you back to that Emory University study. That's now what, like 16, 17 years ago right now?
Yeah, I love that study so much. One of the key findings from that study was that children who know more about their family history are more resilient and they have greater self-esteem. And so even if it's something as simple as telling a story around the dinner table at night about how their grandparents met or what it was like for them to lose a job and have to move their family somewhere else to gain employment, simple stories like that, greater resilience, more self-esteem in children.
Boy, I'm seeing that in my own grandkids. I have one granddaughter in particular who's already deep into the weeds in family history, and she's 8 years old. And she loves hearing the stories, and she really likes understanding the things that her people on all sides had to overcome. And it's made her a really very special young lady because she's very strong in the things she has to overcome because she knows that she can do it because the people before her did it. Krista Callan is back with me as we talk about the recent releases over at Ancestry.com. We do this every month. We kind of go through them because it's really fun to hear what's now available that may affect your research. Where do we begin this month, Krista?
There's so many things to cover. And usually we talk about a lot of the new record collections, but this month we've made a lot of changes to the site based on user feedback. So I'd love to run through those.
Sure.
Let's start with the Ancestry Messaging Center. So for those of you who use Ancestry, you know that you can send messages and receive messages from other Ancestry users. You can reply to a message and you can message any of your DNA matches for free. You don't have to have an Ancestry subscription. Well, 2 things that we're doing now. First thing is we've started notifying users as part of our monthly email update if they have unread messages waiting for them. So if they haven't been back to the site in a while, we want to make sure they know that you're trying to reach out to them.
Messaging with people that you find, it can be really frustrating when you don't get any response. And really, a lot of the time, it's very simply the fact that they forgot about the message or they haven't looked in a long time. So that notification can make a big difference in maybe connecting with somebody who can have that key little bit of information to help you make your breakthroughs.
Absolutely. Yeah. There's lots of data that we're getting in right now that's saying people are coming back just because we're providing them with that little alert. Because like you said, sometimes they just forget. I do. I have some unresponded messages I still need to respond to.
But I love this idea of attaching photographs to the messages. I mean, that's a new thing, and that means we can stay right within the messaging system and the safety that that brings, that feeling of security as we work within the system instead of having to go to email addresses.
Yeah. So one of the things that we found is that when people can connect with an image of a grandparent or a great-grandparent that they never knew, a great uncle in a military uniform, whatever that may be, that emotional connection strengthens between them and the person that's messaging them and between them and their ancestors. And so we now have the ability, or it's rolling out, so everybody should have it by the end of this month, the ability to attach an image from your family tree. If it's a deceased person, your tree needs to be public, obviously. And you can share a photo directly through Ancestry messaging. And I do just want to point out that this is just phase one of where we're going with the kinds of things that you can send to one another in messaging to help facilitate that communication and those discoveries.
That's really one of the challenges, isn't it, for all of you at Ancestry, is to try to figure out better ways to get people engaged and respond to one another. Because when those connections are made, I mean, there are lifetime friendships that are made and partnerships in research. I mean, it's a big deal, and it sure is a lot of fun.
Yeah, so that's one new feature this month. The next one has to do with our Ancestry DNA match list. So for the 18 million plus people who've taken the Ancestry DNA test, one of the challenges has always been how to group that information effectively to be able to make discoveries. And that network effect and those shared matches in your DNA is really one of the powers that drives Ancestry DNA discoveries. So we rolled out just a few weeks ago the ability to add your matches to groups in bulk. So you used to have to do it one at a time. And when you're dealing with 20 or 30, or I think my mom has 70,000 DNA matches, that gets a little tedious. So this bulk add should help speed up some of those discovery processes.
Yeah. And then you've got the tree tags, some additional ones that are coming on.
For sure. Yeah. So in conjunction with the Danish West Indies records that we just released, we recognized that we needed some My Tree tags to facilitate some of the discoveries that were being made. So we've added a set of diversity tags. They are under the life experience section of My Tree tags, and they are slave owner, enslaved person, free person of color, and indentured servant. So if you're working in your family tree with a person and that person meets one of those criteria, you add the tree tag. That allows you then to search your entire tree for people who have that particular tag on it. Helps you just coordinate your information a little better and possibly make some new discoveries.
Great new stuff. Talk to you again next month, Krista. Thanks so much.
Thanks. Talk to you later.
And coming up next, David Allen Lambert returns for another round of Ask Us Anything on Extreme Genes, America's Family History Show.
At Legacy Tree Genealogists, we provide families like yours with the stories of your ancestors, a legacy that will be cherished for generations to come. Legacy Tree Genealogists provides genealogy research for clients worldwide, helping them discover their roots and personal history through records, narratives, and DNA analysis. And when your research requires access to on-site archives in the countries your ancestors lived, Legacy Tree Genealogists has researchers in more than 100 countries around the globe who know the local language and how to get their hands on the records you need. Legacy Tree Genealogists is the recommended research firm of genealogy industry leaders worldwide, including MyHeritage, 23andMe, and more. Check out what our clients have to say. Absolutely the best. They communicated through the entire process, and my report arrived on time. The story of my family with supporting documents was very fulfilling. Tom G. Google review. Don't wait any longer. Request your free quote today at legacytree.com. Legacy Tree Genealogists. We do the research. You enjoy the discoveries.
Anytime is a great time to learn more about your family. Did you miss Roots Tech Connect this year? It's not too late to experience Roots Tech classes, keynotes, and how-to content. Just visit rootstech.org to see what you missed and to experience Roots Tech Connect on your own timetable. Select inspiring and insightful messages that will help you in your pursuit to connect with and share your family story in new ways. You can then use the free resources found at FamilySearch.org or the Family Search Family Tree app to have a deeper personal experience getting to know your family, past and present. Connecting with family and learning about your ancestors provides healing, peace, and a sense of belonging. And it's easy to share what you learn with others to help and inspire them as well. Visit rootstech.org for some inspiration or visit FamilySearch.org to continue on your journey of family discovery today. Well, genies, what a time we're all going through right now. And with all this time on our hands, you probably agree the best lemonade we can make out of this is to sharpen our genie axes and learn how to extend our family trees, gather more photos and documents, and discover those remarkable family stories our descendants can benefit from for generations. Well, I have more time now, too, and I want to help you learn what you need to know. That's why I've created a new Facebook group, Genealogy and Family History Breakthrough Strategies. I'm so pleased that so many of you have already signed up and are helping us to create a supportive community of family history researchers. On this page, we can brainstorm and share ideas on how to tear down those brick walls that we all have. So feel free to join us. The Facebook page again is Genealogy and Family History Breakthrough Strategies. Feel at home with others who live in our Genie world and want to make the most of this unique time. Genealogy and Family History Breakthrough Strategies. Join us. All right, it's time once again for Ask Us Anything on Extreme Genes, America's Family History Show, and extremegenes.com. David Allen Lambert is back from the New England Historic Genealogical Society for our first question. And David, it comes from Cindy Sue in Ocala, Florida. And she says, guys, I'm told that I descend from Pocahontas. Is there any way to prove this long-standing family tradition? Good question, Cindy Sue. David, well, this is something we hear a lot of, don't we? I mean, Pocahontas comes up a lot in people's family histories for some reason.
She does. In fact, of course, she married an Englishman, John Rolfe, and has family that have been in Virginia society for a long time. In fact, you find people that have come forward and published on it and whatnot, but actually just recently I stumbled across on Twitter, there is now a Pocahontas DNA project. And they are looking for descendants of Moatoa, which was her other name, and also she was known as Rebecca Rolfe. And many people don't know that. That's her English name. It was someone that a lot of people have probably family tradition that we descend from Pocahontas. Well, there are genealogical records that actually will tie the descendants of her Rolfe children right down to many of the Virginia families. And of course, where our listener is in Florida or out in California, this could be spread anywhere around the globe. So now there is a DNA project called the Pocahontas DNA Project at PocahontasDNAproject.com and also on Twitter at Pocahontas DNA PR for project, and you can find out about it. One of the things that I always find it's a little difficult, like my wife and one of my daughters have 2% Native American in their autosomal DNA. And you got to figure out how far back Pocahontas lived. I mean, here's somebody who was born in the late 1500s.
Right.
So finding a direct female line through mitochondrial might be tough. Obviously, there's not going to be a Y DNA that you're going to be able to do other than maybe a direct Rolfe line that comes into that. But you may not even find the markers. I mean, I think that I would need to turn to someone like Blaine or Cece to kind of get their thoughts on that, because you could essentially not show any Native American DNA that far back. What's your thoughts on that, Fish?
Well, because female lines, first of all, are usually quicker generationally. For instance, my wife has a fourth great grandfather that was born like 2 years after my second great grandfather, because women generally have children younger than the men do, and so it just kind of works out that way. So when you're talking about late 16th century, the 1500s like that, you're going back probably, 15, 16 generations? And autosomal is usually good to about 10, but not particularly reliably that far back. But you do get matches that come from that distance. So when you're talking that far back with Pocahontas, I don't see that you could get any DNA matches that would be of any consequence at all when it comes to autosomal.
Right, and maybe what they're doing is they're gathering up known descendants and they're matching up the DNA. I don't know. Maybe it's a good guess for the show. I'll dig it a little bit further into this one for you.
Let's figure that one out. The other thing is, though, there is a lot of research out there. There are proven lines out there, but there are a lot of them that are very questionable. And there's more than one person named John Rolfe back there as well that are sometimes confused, as I recall, because my wife descends from John Rolfe.
I descend from a Rolfe family from Newbury, Massachusetts from the 17th century. And I got very excited when I heard that there was a connection. I said, well, maybe I'm distant cousins, but of course it's not as common as a name as I had hoped when I was 12, but not the case. So I don't know who my wife's Native American ancestor is. I sure wish it was Pocahontas. Great genealogy for my kids to tell about at school. But as DNA is dug deeper and we can look further back, who knows? Maybe they can identify some of the DNA markers that Pocahontas may have had.
Thanks for the question. Got another one coming up when we return with part 2 of Ask Us Anything in 3 minutes on Extreme Genes, America's Family History Show. All right, back at it for our final segment this week on Extreme Genes, America's Family History Show, and extremegenes.com. It's Ask Us Anything. David Allen Lambert is back with me. And David, we've got an email from Amy in Las Vegas, Nevada. And she says, Fisher and David, love your tips. Here's a question for you. I have several stories that have been passed down through oral tradition. How would you suggest I go about proving they are real? Great question. I like that, Amy. Thank you. David, I got some thoughts on this, so you start and I'll pick up.
Yeah. Well, it's a really good question. My own grandmother would tell family stories, and some of them I can't find a primary source, even a secondary source to back them up. But that story is still important, and you should not forget them. So one of the things I do, Fish, is that I will take from the best of my memory and write down how my grandmother told it to me. And then I footnote in my sources, the source being my grandmother, when I heard the story, approximately the year, and where I heard it. Maybe it was at my house or at a family gathering. And then what I do is I contact other cousins and say, hey, listen, do you know this story? And maybe they have a different spin on it. And then I footnote that one and that one and that one. So you usually find an ounce of truth even on some of the best oral traditions, even if they are fictional.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I have a bunch of them in my lines, and there were several that were left by a great aunt, my grandmother Fisher's sister. I never met grandmother Fisher, so this sister I did meet when I was a child, and she wrote down a few things. And as I grew up and got into this, I started looking at these stories, and they were all kind of strange. One of them had to do with the family being heirs to a great fortune left over in Great Britain. And when the internet came out, I was able to research it and found out that this was a very common 19th century scam that was going on. It was the Townley family estate. And so as I looked at this, I realized, oh, this great aunt of mine was remembering something she had heard early in her life. And I guess our family was caught up into looking into the possibility that they might inherit this incredible fortune waiting for them in Lancashire. But it turned out to be nothing. And then there was another story out there about where this particular ancestor was from. And as I've ultimately narrowed it down, I came to realize that she actually gave the name from a popular song. And so once I realized that this popular song told the story of where this ancestor was from, that actually helped me to narrow down where he was located. But it wasn't quite the same, but close enough where I was able to zero in on it. So like you, I found that with all of these oral traditions, there seems to be some kernel of truth, or at least a story behind the story, like this 19th century scam. And we ran into a similar situation, by the way, on my wife's side, where somebody actually stole a family Bible in the late 19th century, apparently because they thought by using that Bible to prove a family line, they were going to inherit a ton of money as well overseas. Crazy, huh?
Happened to my family, too, in Canada. The Sands fortune from the family of Connecticut Sandses that immigrated to Nova Scotia. And in the newspaper, my great-great-grandfather is apparently going to Halifax to investigate the story of this fortune that he is related to. It was all a scam.
It's all a scam. Good stuff. Well, thanks so much for the question, Amy. And if you have a question for Ask Us Anything, you can always email us at askusanything@extremegenes.com. David, thanks so much. Great to talk to you. Catch you again next week.
All right, my friend. Stay well.
And thanks to you for joining us this week for Extreme Genes. Thanks to our guest for coming on this week, Jim Bailey, the metal detectorist who has discovered a whole new chapter in the history of the pirate captain Henry Every, and now the story has gone international. Absolutely amazing stuff. Also to Krista Cowan for coming on from our sponsors at Ancestry.com and filling us in on all the things that are happening over there. Lots of great changes coming up. If you missed any of the show or any past shows, of course, catch the podcast. It's on iTunes, iHeartRadio, TuneIn Radio, Spotify, and ExtremeGenes.com. Talk to you again next week. And remember, as far as everyone knows, we're a nice, normal family.